30 more
Haven't had
seconds.
coffee yet this morning.
I only do decaf now. All right, well, it's 9 o'clock and it looks like we have a quorum, so I'll call the meeting to order. Right. First item on the agenda is a roll call from the committee. We have Jason Klonowski and Karen Warner and myself. And we have Jeannie Beasley as well.
Good morning.
Good morning. All the members of the committee are present, so we have a quorum. Others in attendance are Dr. Menzel, Ms. Crozier, Ms. Wilson, Clough, and Gladys Wagner, of course. And then is there anyone else in the boardroom? Nope. All right, there's a roll call. First action item on the agenda is approval of the prior meeting minutes. Can I have a motion to approve the prior meeting minutes?
So moved.
Motion to approve.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Klonowski. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, second by Ms. Warner. All in favor, please signal by voting yay.
Okay.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thanks very much, guys. Next agenda item is report on prior audit findings, and I believe that it's going to be Shannon and Alexis.
This morning, Alexis has a PowerPoint presentation to walk through, provide the committee an update on the response to the initial HR audit. So we'll turn it over to Alexis.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to try to share my screen here, so if you can just a moment, please. Just about, it's uploading right now. Can someone give me a thumbs up and let me know you can see my audit one? Great, thanks so much. All right, well, thank you. I don't know if I have a time limit, but start waving arms if I go too long. Appreciate it. So I just first want to thank you for the opportunity to present the recommendations and the enhancements that have been made as a result of the City of Scottsdale audit. The audit certainly confirmed some things that we recognize needed to be improved, and I'm pleased to be able to share the work that the HR team in collaboration with finance, payroll, IT have made. So I also want to first preface this by saying when I do presentations, I always advise against a lot of text in a presentation. However, given that the findings are listed as such, there is quite a bit of text in here I'm not going to read because I also don't like doing that during a presentation. But at the end of this, I will share the presentation with Gladys, who will email it to the audit committee, so you have this for further reading material. So I'm first going to go over finding number 1, which spoke to the reliability and availability of data that would help us to better inform our retention strategies. If you take a look on the left-hand side, these were the actual findings with in that finding, or I'm sorry, each of the areas within the finding. And then on the right side, you're going to see the update or what is occurring as a result of that. So in the first area, this was about evaluating our turnover rates, including turnover for key positions and programs to better enhance our recruitment and retention strategies. So this is a preliminary data report on that. We are also working to enhance this a little bit better, to have it in one presentation for our supervisors, so that they can see why people are leaving, so that we can hone in on what's working. There's certain things, you know, if someone's retiring, I'm not necessarily going to change their mind about that, but if there's dissatisfaction or things like that, that may be something that we can address. So I'm going to click on this link in here and hope that you can see it. If someone can give me a thumbs up on that you can see that link. You cannot. Okay.
No.
Let me try one thing. It worked earlier and I figured that would happen. So let me try real quick. I'm going to have to likely unshare, or you know, it always works. It's like my car when I take it to the auto guy. It never makes the same sound when I get there. Let's see. How about now?
If you can make it larger, though, it's very difficult to read.
Got it. How about that? A little bit better? Okay, thanks. So here you can see our resignation summaries by month at the top, and that broken down by employee classification. And then below that, you can see the reasons that people are leaving. So as I stated earlier, evaluating this data will help to inform the supervisors about what is happening within either the school level or the department level. The first column, declined position. So we made offers, the governing board approved it, but then actually, and a lot of this happens with our classified employees, they later change their mind before they start and decline the position. Job satisfaction obviously is one we definitely want to take a look at. And secondly, you know, transferring out of the district that's one we're going to have to further dive into to say, are they going to another district or are they just going to another field? So this is just a quick snapshot right now of the termination reasons as to why our folks are leaving us. And again, we'll be doing a further data dive into that too, and also sharing that information with our supervisors so that they can try to understand what's going on.
Alexis,
Yes.
Can you explain the difference between certified and classified
I sure can.
employees?
Certified employees are those employees that are certified from the state of Arizona. So those are our teachers, speech language pathologists, occupational therapists. These that provide, they are required to have a certificate from the state of Arizona in order to do their job. Our classified employees are those employees that are in support positions, bus drivers, custodial, facilities maintenance staff, administrative support, things of that nature. Administrators, obviously, what might be a principal, assistant principal, directors, and above. Okay.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
On that last one, just the individuals that left the profession.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering, any thoughts on why people choose to do that?
So I think it depends, right? And that's where having an exit interview might assist us in better understanding why. We know for certified staff, this is a national trend that people are frustrated with the low pay, the demands upon the position. You know, quite frankly, we've had people say, look, I'm leaving this and I'm going to go somewhere else, you know, and I'm making $20,000 to $30,000 more dollars. So that is one factor. You know, it's difficult in a national teacher shortage and certainly at our state level to make major changes, especially on base salary stuff, but we're certainly working to improve what we're doing here in Scottsdale as a result. So those are some of the things we hear anecdotally, but we would have to further dive down into conversations with those individuals.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think I have to go. I'm going to try to.
Hold on, it's Karen Warner.
Hi.
Hi, so I've got a little bit of bad connection, but anyways, I think something that also needs to be addressed here is, people tend to not always say why they're leaving because they want to leave the door open to come back. But we also have been made aware that there are people, and it just happened, somebody was very unhappy with their work situation and she ended up getting put on administrative leave and then resigned as a deal with you guys. There were exit interviews that were done last spring at the end of the school year with Dr. Menzel, and we were not updated on those notes. Now I hear what I heard from the staff, but we never got an update from Dr. Menzel. So I think we have to get really honest about why people are leaving and have that be safe, because there's a lot of rumblings currently of why people are leaving because they're unhappy with their work situations, being silenced, being intimidated, and so on. And those are just things that we are hearing out. People are reaching out and communicating to myself and others. And so I would really like for us to get honest about those things and allow for a safe place for people can come forward and not, just get put on administrative leave and pushed out or things like that.
Thank you. There's two things I want to make note of is the resignation reasons. Those are indicated in our the personnel action request, the PAR that gets submitted by the site. And then additionally, they do receive an exit interview, and those they have the opportunity to then further share information about their experience in Scottsdale. So.
I have another question. This is Jeannie. Is the audit committee members allowed to see exit interviews or some kind of paperwork they fill out? Are we allowed to see those?
I mean, I think I'd make a suggestion that's probably outside the scope of our work.
Okay, that's fine. I'm just curious. Thank you.
Okay, I'm hopeful I'm back on slide 2 and everyone can see that okay. So I spoke a little bit about this regarding the termination codes. We are working to implement an electronic way to do this. Previously, let's say a teacher submitted a resignation letter to the principal and the administrative support person is responsible for putting in the termination PAR. That person may or may not, and as was indicated in the audit finding, they were selecting resignation other, which didn't give us information. So we've created a resignation form. We are close to finalizing that. Let me see if I can share that with you as well. So this may live, we're trying to determine the best home for this form, whether it's in employee access or records, but you can see there's a drop-down box at the bottom where they can select the reason for why they are leaving, which would ensure that the admin support person, when they submit the PAR, actually align the PAR reasons and give us that more specific information that we're looking for. Okay, I'm sorry I have to keep going back and forth like this. All right, so back to the presentation. So the next finding was about employee complaints and grievances. And, there are a couple things that we have in place now to address what might be considered a complaint, a concern versus a grievance. So each school site has a site liaison committee that is new for this year. And representatives for that committee are able to receive information from other people at the school site to make either a recommendation or share a concern. Sometimes those concerns may not be employee complaint specifically. It could be something about, we noticed the playground equipment is, I don't know, not functioning, let's say. But it also may be something else, although we try to redirect those things. But there is an avenue for that. Additionally, we have our governing board policy about grievance. There is language in both our classified and certified agreement for grievance language that was updated for this school year. Additionally, obviously, we want to do training for folks that they understand what they can and cannot do. Those are, we have annual compliance checklists that our employees received that have links in there to our governing board policies with reminders about what policies are. We have fundamentals, which is our platform for training requirements that are shared with our employees, and they are required to complete those. So for example, your mandatory reporting requirements, people have to take that training and take a quiz and complete those things. But then additionally, human resources implementing a system that we are documenting, whether it be a concern versus a grievance, and then what the resolution or the outcome to that may have been, the school site as well, so that as we finish the year, we can take a look at trend data to say, oh, we see this particular site, this school or this department is having more concerns, than others. Maybe we need to take a look and work with that supervisor there to support them with, could be, I always find that a lot of things that happen in our system are because conversations aren't held at a lower level to address. It can be just as minimal as, somebody's been late for work and it's obviously impacting things, and then their colleagues are getting upset. And sometimes it's about having that first conversation to address that. And so we want to work with our supervisors to help them have those. Nobody enjoys having those conversations, but we want to help them be able to do that. So we have implemented a system in our department to start tracking those things. And then lastly on this finding one, with regard to our substitutes, this is a huge celebration for us. In the last fiscal year, we had 391 substitutes in our pool. We are now up to 513 as of November 30th. In the previous year, we had an average of a hiring rate of 18 per month. And in this fiscal year thus far, we're on average hiring 29 substitutes per month. Our fill rate has been so much better, and I would say it's there's a few factors. In FY21, we were at 80%. That happened to also be the year of COVID. And while the fill rate was good, we were also, part of that year we weren't here, or weren't in person, I should say. You can see we hit a low of 77%. Last year, our average fill rate was 81%. And this year, thus far, we're on average 89% fill rate for substitutes. So this is exciting for us. One big highlight is, additionally, we revised our policy regarding general leave to ensure that people are using leave for the appropriate reason. So the Monday after Thanksgiving last year, we had a 75% fill rate. This year, we had a 95% fill rate. So I would equate that to two things. One, people were here after Thanksgiving. Our employees were here. And we also had more substitutes to cover for the absences for people that weren't here. Additionally, our substitute coordinator, Denise Harrison, has done a great job. She is sending out handwritten thank you notes to substitutes. She has implemented a guest teacher incentive program called Guest Teacher of the Month. And we've purchased like little notebooks, and we have people in our department that are far craftier than I, and they're putting their name on the little notebook, and they get their picture taken and they get their little notebook. So that's pretty exciting. All right. Trying to. So on finding two, this was about our recruiting effectiveness and taking a look at our metrics more and oversight. So we are just about finished with our documents to ensure that we are consistent with our practices with regards to hiring. We previously did have one in place, but we have added some more specificity to this one, and we'll be training our hiring administrators on this process. That will happen in January, which happens just in time for our big spring hiring season. And I'm excited to be able to present this to our administrators and also to ensure more consistency in that. I'm going to open up this link as well. So give me just one moment, please. This is a draft document. So I want to make sure everybody is aware. So we're still working on finalizing some things in there. So you can see this is a pretty much a step-by-step on what a hiring administrator would do, from posting the position to the composition of the hiring committee to the timeline on this, because we know in a shortage of staff, not just teachers, that, you know, having an efficient process is going to help us get more candidates hired, recommendations for hire, making sure those are being followed. Acceptance, and then trying to get people scheduled for orientation, excuse me, in a much quicker fashion. So that, again, that is in draft form, but just about ready to go out for our hiring administrators. Additionally, sorry to have to toggle back and forth. In finding two, this spoke to our job postings. We knew that it was a mess. To be fair, that the language or the standardization of the actual job posting, that has been cleaned up significantly. We still have a little bit of refinement work to do on that. We also cleaned up the actual posting. So there's a real desire from some of our hiring administrators, especially in the areas that continue to be difficult to fill, our paraprofessionals, bus drivers, just to keep the posting up all year round. But what that does is it pushes it to the bottom. So we have worked with them. We have been sending weekly reports to the hiring administrators to make sure that what we see as postings are accurate from their standpoint, and to make sure we cleaned up. I think there were 2,000 postings at the start, and we now have a more accurate reflection of what our postings are. So I think that's a big celebration for our team. Our staffing coordinator, Carly Mesa, and in conjunction with some of our other team members here, have been working on standardizing that to make it look more professional, and also to make the candidate experience a little better. On the next finding,
can you advance the slides, because we're still on the cover slide, and also, will you be emailing these out to the audit committee?
I will. I'm sorry. It shows that I am on finding 2 slides. So do you see that now or no?
No.
Still not? I've got a red screen around it and everything.
Nope.
No? Okay. I am very sorry. Let me just close this out for 1 second. Try sharing a different way and see if that works. Okay. Do you see
Now we see it, yes.
Okay.
Thank you. And we need to pick up the pace just a little bit.
Okay, will do.
Thank you.
We are working to collect hiring data so that we can review it on a monthly basis to evaluate our workflow, make sure the routing time is improved, and also to see how our team is performing with regard to that. In finding D, again, the hiring process for supervisors, that will also support this area. And we're also creating a checklist for the supervisor to complete to ensure that they have met all of those things in the hiring process checklist. And then we will audit on a regular basis to make sure that they have the documents necessary from a hiring standpoint. There was a finding about the pending certification of newly hired certified staff. So folks that may be coming from out of state, sometimes there's a delay as they're transferring their certificate from one state to Arizona. We set up a spreadsheet. Our staffing coordinator worked with our HR specialist. They were monitoring that weekly and touching base with the Department of Education to make sure. And as a result, we're in much better standing than we were last year with regards to that. And then lastly, the other thing that we were able to do was create a certified placement schedule. I will see if we can see this. Are you able to see the placement schedule or no?
No.
Okay. I'm a little nervous about sharing since there were some difficulties, but what I can tell you is I believe that a third grader could, maybe even a second grader could very likely determine, if I said you've got a bachelor's degree and you have 2 years of experience, the table is very specific as to where you would be placed. And not only does that help the candidate who's looking to join us in Scottsdale Unified, but our team has a more consistent process than what's previously in place. So we're able to, that is on our website, outward facing, you can see what additional compensation you might receive. If you're nationally board certified, you'll see that you'll get an additional stipend on top of your base salary. And again, I am certain that my former third graders would be able to if given an example, would be able to find their salary placement as such. Lastly, in finding 3, we have created, in the first one, we talked about PAR types and progress to prioritize the work and streamlining the PAR workflow. I'm very pleased that just recently we finished a reduction in workflow for the PAR. We were able to eliminate anywhere between 2 to 5 stops that a PAR was making. So if 10 people had to touch a PAR, you can imagine if I'm checking PARs 1 time a day, it could take up to 10 days for that PAR to make it through the system. We've reduced that significantly. I want to just give a shout out to the finance team, our ERP systems analyst, Edna Moore, for helping us to do that. We had to actually stop the entire system from doing PARs just to make that update, but everybody was very good about it and very pleased. The next finding was about termination procedures. There was concern that there were, and it was true that there were staff in the system that were no longer employed. We cleaned up, we created a guidebook, first of all, about how to do a termination PAR. The biggest part in that was training for the site, which is happening with our admin support folks, because what was happening is we didn't know an employee had left because we're not at the 30 different schools and the multiple departments to stress the importance of them submitting a termination PAR so that we can deactivate users from the process. So we've had 2 trainings in person and then bi-weekly trainings with our classified coordinator as well as our HR specialist to make sure that's happening. And then lastly, deactivating user access. We did clean up quite a bit. We had 583 that were disabled from Active Directory, 226 were identified as active employees who were not active. We inactivated them and cleaned up all of the data within there. And now everything is automatized. So if today was somebody's last day, within a couple of hours of 5 p.m. tonight, they'll be deactivated from our system, including other platforms as a result. And then I'll just go through this quickly.
Alexis?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. I just had a couple questions. So
Yes.
for finding number 3, is there, will it be completed? Will part A be completed by December, by the end of the month?
Yes, we have the guidebook. I think what I have to keep in mind is we're trying to take, what I call a large ship. We've got as many schools as we have in many departments, is to continue to reiterate that. So they have the information. We just have to make sure that we stay on top of them to ensure that the PARs are getting in. Our team is also, we've set up schedules so that they're checking 2 to 3 times a day to process those PARs as well. So
Okay,
I think it should be, yes.
And then for finding number 2, the completion date is January 31. We're not going to meet till after that. Is there any reason that those items aren't going to be completed by that deadline?
I think we should be right on target with that. I will update prior to that meeting to let you know if we think we're lagging in one particular area, but I think we're on track. And again, we're just trying to move one big ship with the small little canoe of HR alongside to help make that turn for them. But I think we're definitely in a good place.
All right, thank you.
Yes. And then lastly, I just want to point out, in addition to these things that we have done to improve as a result of the audit, we've onboarded over 700 employees since July 1. We've been doing drop-in interviews every Monday. We've had a job fair every month except for July. Either we hosted or attended one. We've implemented a new evaluation tool for our teachers and are providing training for both them and administrators. We've had some annual reports that we've completed on time, and we've automatized our personnel agenda to make sure there are no errors. It was a manual entry that was quite the nightmare. And then for our next steps, obviously, as you just pointed out, we want to make sure that we get those final audit recommendations completed by the target dates, to continue to provide training for the sites and the departments and our HR team, who we have quite a few new members here, updating our application form for a more efficient applicant experience. We've got a video interviewing platform that we're going to integrate with that, which I think will help. We're doing interest-based negotiations right now, and we've got a compensation study coming up, and then we've got phase 2 of the audit, and that's it. I just want to thank City of Scottsdale for the opportunity to take a look at what we were doing, what needed some enhancement, and super appreciative of the audit committee's recommendation, Dr. Menzel. And I really want to give a big shout out to our team, who's worked very hard, very, very hard to get these things in place, and in collaboration with the finance department, our payroll team, and IT.
Thanks, Alexis.
Thank you.
Dr. Menzel, did you want to add something?
Well, I do. I want to thank Alexis and the team. And there are 2 questions or requests. One, the exit interview surveys are important to us in those conversations that we have. We also have information related to people who leave and come back. And I'm going to ask Shannon to tell a story about an employee who recently did that, because I think it's important to know why people stay and when they leave, what their experience is. And the second one is, I'd like to ask Lay if there's a way to quantify the impact of implementing the recommendations from this phase 1 audit. So we see a lot of the work that HR has done. I don't know if the city has recommendations for how you quantify the impact of that, but it's something that I think would be relevant, because these improvements are designed to help advance our strategic plan goal 3 related to attracting and retaining talent. But interested from the audit side if there's a way to quantify it. And Shannon, maybe you can share the other HR story in terms of the returning employee.
Yeah, this is my favorite story of the year. So our employee resource, our ERS person lives over in Tolleson area. She was offered a job close to home, making several $1,000s more than what we could pay her here. And between the pay increase, and of course she's not far from retirement, so she's thinking about how she can boost that up. Between the pay increase and literally a matter of 5-minute drive versus about a 45-minute to an hour drive, here said, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to switch to this other district. It's just, I like it here, but I can't, between the pay and the commute, I can't say no to this. So we tried really hard to keep her, and but she went ahead and made that change. Within 2 days of starting at that other district, she was calling us, saying, I'm really not happy. I think I've made a big mistake. By the end of that first week, she was in the HR director's office at that other district, bawling, saying, this is the worst mistake I've ever made in my life. And she was back with us a week later. She had called us and said, is there any way I can come back? I made a horrible mistake. And what it really came down to is she said, Scottsdale isn't perfect. We have our things that we need to work on, but the people are kind and generous. They care for you. The work atmosphere is worth more to me than the pay and the commute. And we worked with her and said, your job, you can do a lot of that. There's things that you can do from home. There's things that you can do from here. So we're working with her on that part of it, but it really came down to the atmosphere and just how people treat each other was a huge factor between here and the other district. And like I said, literally in the director in HR's office saying this was the worst mistake I've ever made in my life. So we're excited to have her back because she is a unicorn within her role. And she has done so much to help us with this audit, with other audits, with just getting things cleaned up within our employee maintenance system. So we're excited to have her back and said, yeah, the grass isn't always greener is, I guess, the point of that story. So we're really happy to have her back.
Question, and this is just an overall sort of quality of life / what I see in the real world. What is the district's current policy on how many days a week you must come in given your role? Is it like, yeah, it's 5, it's 8 to 8, 7 days a week, or is it like, no, you can roll from home depending on your role, 1 day a week, or other?
I think it varies between departments. I'm going to let Alexis.
Yeah, I figured it would. I just wondered if it's possible that someone could work from home, allowed to, or is it like, no, sorry, everybody is required to come in all day, every day?
Jason, I think it's a really good question because, as we came out of the pandemic and people realized, we can work from home, there were shifts that we thought, we could make for certain positions. Our IT department, primarily their work is in front of a computer every day. And if they have that capability at home, again, with supervisor support, they may be able to work from home a couple of days per week. So it's really dependent upon the position. Obviously, we need teachers in the classroom. So, they are in person. My department, everybody wants to be here, which is great. So they're all here in person every day for the most part. Every now and again, somebody wants to work from home. So that's okay. So it's really dependent upon the position and the capabilities and the requirements. Obviously, if somebody has an in-person meeting, they have to be available to come in for that. They have to be, it's just like everybody else, available during that work time.
But for example, in this position, and I'm thinking more about like the demands of daycare and how people were like, oh wow, it's great that I could work work from home 1 day a week and be able to pick my kids up or whatever. Like we have that flexibility where available to again, augment like, hey, yeah, I don't have the salary, but I do, and my proximity is unfavorable. But if I could do 1 day a week here, that might, or at home, that might make a difference.
I'll tell you, within finance, we have maybe 2 to 3 that do it, that work from home 1 day a week. Our thing is Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. You do not do it on a Monday or Friday. And work from home means you work from home. Nobody should be able to tell whether you're in the office or you're there. Your phone still goes to your computer. You answer it like you were there. There should be no, you should not be able to tell if that person was, that everything should work the same way, regardless of if they were here or there. And so that's been our stance, is that, at least in the finance department, is if you want to do that 1 day a week, I think there's 2, maybe 3 people who do it. And I don't ever want to hear somebody say, oh, well, that person works from home all the time. You better not be able to tell the difference between if you're in the office or you're working from home. And so it's worked. And our thing too is you have to sign an agreement. If your kids are homesick, that doesn't mean you're at home working from home. You're at home taking care of your sick child that day. So we make it very clear about, it's the same as if you're in the office.
Understood. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Does anyone else have any other questions for Alexis? Well,
does Lay have any ideas with respect to quantifying impact of the implementation of the recommendations?
Hi, yes, Dr. Menzel, I can answer that question for you. And first I wanted to comment, Alexis, it sounds like you've made a lot of progress. I'm very happy to hear all of the work that your team has put in. But a couple of ways that we evaluated some of the metrics during the audit, to take a look at retention efforts overall, really looking at the number of the people that are leaving right now that Alexis has identified. How is that compared to what your normal might be, what you're seeing the year before and the year before that? Because it might not, even though you're seeing turnover, it might be normal turnover. And so having the data from the prior years will be helpful as comparison. What we struggled with during the audit was that the data from prior years wasn't very clean to use, and that might be the challenge here. If you could at some point start, this is the data that we want to maintain so that in future months and quarters, you can do that comparison a little bit better. That would be probably the best metric to see how you've improved. When we tried to look at some of the prior years, there were some issues with just identifying when people were leaving, like a very clear, this is a termination date, or this is a hire date, or this is the classification for that employee. And because you also want to see, are you having more turnover within certain types of positions, certain schools even, or certain departments. So that data was difficult when we were doing the audit, because the data in the system was not quite clear which site those employees were assigned to when they left and how long they had been there. There were some challenges, but for retention purposes, that will be the best way to measure if you've improved overall retention. Looking at some of the process improvements in terms of time to process PARs and those termination requests, we looked at within the system when a PAR is submitted to when it's reviewed by the different individuals and departments and when it was finally finalized, and looking at that time frame of how long it was taking. And so that will be one way to measure if the flows that you've updated are working to streamline out that a little bit more. And knowing that your times are different throughout the year because of different amounts of volume that you see, you might need to take a look at that from different periods of the school year too, rather than an average of overall. Those are the main metrics that I can think of right now. In terms of the hiring process, one typical metric is looking at the time it takes to process onboarding, and also from the application process itself. This was also an issue when we were doing the audit, because those dates weren't clear in the system as to when the exact hire date was in relation to the application dates. So that might need to get clarified in your data to be able to do that metric a little bit better. In terms of the application date versus the hire date, the problem we were having was it was difficult to match up that information in Talent Ed versus your hire information in Visions. So if you're able to put that information together, it would tell you a little bit more about whether your hiring process is flowing a little bit smoother. Hopefully
I appreciate
that
that. And if I may, we actually have everything you just said. So that retention data, I've got a graph that's going to it's pretty cool looking, that shows you how many employees we had at the start of the month, how many at the end of the month. Then we're adding some data to that to further drill down as to including the reasons and the location. So it's almost there. I didn't want to share it today because it's not quite there. And then again, the use of our hiring platform, which Leigh and I had talked about, it's not utilized to the capacity that it has. But we're working on that right now to clean that up and to make sure that that is something that the principals are using, because that will definitely better inform us and get that PAR started. We were relying on the PAR, which, as Leigh talked about, it could take many days. And so we've also created a PAR that's going to show how long a PAR is taking, how long each type of PAR is taking, and we'll have that data available too to analyze for our own team and for everybody else. So I appreciate that.
All right. Well, thanks very much. I think we should probably move on to the next agenda item, which is the phase 2 audit update.
And that would be Leigh, if she could talk about where we are in the process and anticipated timeline.
Sure. We did get a little bit of a late start on this. We started looking at the employment agreements and the policies that are in place with HR. The delay really came in getting the data that we needed to do some of the actual detailed analysis. So just this past week, we're able to get access to the ERP, including, reports on employee status and employee information, so that we can do a better analysis of whether certain positions are falling within the right category and within the right salary ranges that the governing board has approved. So that now that we have that access, I think it should go fairly fast in terms of the analysis, and we're hoping to complete the bulk of that. I know that HR and the district is out towards the end of the month for winter break, so we'll try to finish our work within that time frame and come back to you afterwards with our preliminary questions on any exceptions that we're seeing, so we can follow up. I do need to clarify the scope on one particular item, though, because initially when we had discussed the scope of this particular audit, I understood that the district wanted us to take a look at the memorandums of understanding between the district and the associations that do the bargaining for students for the employee groups. It sounds like there aren't actual agreements for each of these groups. There's a governing board policy overall. That's what no?
No, we do. We have agreements. So there's an agreement with the Administrator Association, the Education Association, and the Support Professional Association. So we should be able to give you those. Yes.
Okay, because we still haven't gotten copies of those as of now. And when we checked, I think one of the HR coordinators has said that they didn't know such agreements. So just want to clarify whether that I understood the requested work correctly, or if there's some sort of misunderstanding. If there are agreements, please send them to us. We've been it's been on the request, but we haven't gotten any.
I apologize. I can get those uploaded right now.
Okay, thank you.
Is it a fair ask that report be finalized by the time this committee meets in March?
In March, yes, that will definitely be doable. We were shooting to complete most of our work in December. It's just we did have a delay in getting some of the employee data, and so, but March is definitely doable.
So perhaps for the March agenda, we should add that piece, the phase 2, as well as Alexis, a follow-up on, just confirming you've hit the mark for the audit items that were the findings that were supposed to be completed in December and January, and then that we're still on pace for the June findings as well.
Good.
Anything else related to phase 2? Well, I put on the agenda a discussion topic for the goals for next year, as well as liaison assignments. And we had spoken about this a little bit. We scratched the surface at the September meeting with discussing having a board liaison. And Dr. Menzel, I know you were going to go back to the board and just confirm that there was no conflict or issue there. Were you able to do that and see whether a board liaison is appropriate, as long as the goal is to fulfill the dictates of the audit committee charter?
So I want to make sure that I'm clear on when you say board liaison, you mean someone from the audit committee who's assigned to gather information and connect. When I checked with general counsel, there's no conflict there.
Excellent. Yeah, my thought on that was gather information and connect with the board, particularly in the form of submitting a report to the board, because the committee is supposed to submit an annual report to the board. And so my goal would be that board liaison person takes on the responsibility of pulling together the information related to that report, sharing it with the rest of the committee so that we can vet it before it goes to the governing board. But we want to show our value to the governing board, and we have an obligation to submit a report to them. So that's one sort of center of responsibility I'd like. And let me go through 2 others, and then I'll open the floor to the committee for conversation. Another is a financial or budget liaison, and that person would be responsible for reviewing the reports that Shannon periodically sends us, connecting with Shannon on any questions that the audit committee may have, reporting out to the committee on any concerns or questions they have on Shannon's reports, and also ensuring that the budget dollars for audit that have been allocated are being spent, and that we think they're being spent in the appropriate way. So that's the second position. The third position is a sort of district audit liaison, works with the district auditor and the audit professionals that are either in the district or hired out by the districts to make sure that the audit plan that we've set forth is being followed, that the audit remediations are on track. And that person would obviously report back to the entire committee to ensure that, we're keeping on pace with what we have set out to do and the plan that has been set forth. So that was a lot, and I talked a lot. I'm curious to hear the committee's thoughts on whether they think these positions or centers of responsibility would be valuable.
Well, I'll take the first crack. Since the one position was originally spoke about in the last meeting, and particularly I had thrown my name in because I do attend the board meetings in person, and I said I would be happy to, report back to the audit committee. We just weren't sure of the scope of what that would entail. But as you described it, I'm still willing to do that. I would have a few questions. Those can be addressed later, but just to make sure I'm clear on what exactly I have to do. But I would certainly be willing to take care of that.
Appreciate it. Jason, what do you think?
I think it's a great way to divide and conquer and eat the elephant one bite at a time. I think it's a great idea, and I would be willing to, fill in whatever gaps you need in terms of, point me at something, and I'd be happy to do it. Okay.
I'll be honest, I was kind of hoping you'd be the finance guy.
Sure.
Okay, great.
100%.
And until we have another member of this committee, I'm willing to take on the audit liaison piece for the district auditor. It's kind of in my wheelhouse anyway, so I'm happy to do that. What I'm thinking I'll do, and I am kind of relying on the district folks on the call to interrupt me and tell me if I'm sideways of any, requirements, is just putting these responsibilities on a piece of paper and circulating them to the group, making sure that we're all buying in and on the same page about them, and then we can continue and sort of go forth and do what we've been assigned to do. Is that fair?
From a district perspective, I think it's fair to do that. If we're going to formalize the roles, then it should be on a future agenda item to do that.
Okay.
If this is an informal structure, as we work to operationalize the audit committee, then we could probably do that at a later time. But I think the cleanest way to do it is to develop the draft and then put it on an future agenda for approval.
Okay. With that said, I don't think, as we're sort of informally developing the draft, I don't think that should stop any one of us from doing, the work that we want to do. I think in particular, one of my goals for next year is to have a final report for the governing board finalized by March. I mean, that's a long time. I think we have time to do that. I really feel like we need to kind of hit on what we're doing, and it will also expose, I think, some opportunities that we have to maybe button down and do a little bit more work. And so, Jeannie, if you're willing to take on, first draft of that, and maybe you and I can chat about my thoughts, I think that'd be great.
Sure.
So awesome, thank you. Another thing that we had talked about at the last meeting was putting a share drive together that had all of the relevant audit information. And so Jeannie has been kind enough to provide a Google Gmail address. That's the way that the district is able to do it. And I know Jason is going to be able to do that as well. And I'll provide that information. About a month ago, I provided Shannon with some audit reporting templates. And so I will get together with Shannon in the interim, and she and I can kind of talk about what makes sense to upload into that share drive. But my goal is for us to see what's on the roadmap for 2024. What's the status of findings? What's the status of audits in completion? And what's the status of future audits, so that we have a good way to communicate between meetings and share information in that way.
Can I build on that, Sarah?
Please.
I do think that the structure of the folders within that shared drive will be helpful in terms of managing the workflow. But I also think, to your point about creating an annual report to the governing board, part of the belief when we established this structure was that the ROI would be evident. That when we did the Hohokam audit, we implemented the changes, we were able to quantify what the district was able to recapture and save the taxpayers as a result of implementing the recommended improvements. That was why I asked the question of Lay regarding the HR piece. I think as an audit committee, we should always be cognizant of what's quantifiable in terms of impact. Some of it might not be as quantifiable, but others are. And I think from an ROI, as every expenditure gets scrutinized, there's a story to tell from the audit committee, and I don't want to lose how we capture that in that annual report.
I appreciate that. So maybe it's better if we all work together to create and build the pieces of that annual report.
Agreed.
Okay, perfect. All right, well, we have a whole 2 minutes left.
I do have a question.
Yes.
I just wondered, is anyone, maybe Scott, you can take this. Has anyone, what's going on with another person for the committee? I know that we voted on somebody recently, but I never saw anything happen after that.
So there were 2 applicants for the open position. There was a split recommendation from the audit committee in terms of reviewing the candidates. So both names are being put forward, and the governing board will decide on Tuesday who the appointee will be.
Okay, thank you.
Scott, that actually raises an interesting question of, I went back and looked at the audit charter and what the charter said about the qualifications for the role on the committee. And so presumably the governing board is looking at that as well.
They have that information and the ability to make the appointment. As I recall, it talks about a diversity of talent and background related to the audit functions. And so that should inform the final decision that they make.
Okay, Thanks, appreciate it. All right, if there's nothing more for the good of the order, can I get a motion to adjourn? Oh, I'm sorry, can I interrupt my own motion? Gladys, I think at some point we lost Karen, and I noticed it at 9:36, but I'm not sure if you noticed when she left, but I think the meeting minutes should denote that we lost her at some point.
Absolutely, thank you. I did notice that, but I didn't catch the time, so 9:36.
I mean, it was at least 9:36. I think
Yeah.
it might have been a little before that, but that's when I noticed.
Okay, thank you so much, Sarah.
Got it. So can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion
So
to
moved.
adjourn.
All
Jason will
right. Awesome. All in favor, say aye.
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 Right. Thanks, folks. Motion carries.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good day.
For your
Yep, you
time.
bet. Thanks.